You know when someone has pushed you so close to the wall that you finally snap and do something you never thought you'd do? Yeah, that was me. I'm the guy who just wanted a quiet life in a peaceful cul-de-sac. I wave at my neighbors, mow my lawn on Saturdays, and mind my own business. But Karen, our self-appointed HOA president, had other plans. It started small. A passive-aggressive yellow warning note in my mailbox about cluttered curb appeal. Then came the so-called random inspections. I caught her on my doorbell camera twice, hovering around my mailbox like she was casing the place. But the final straw, the official letter she personally delivered. In her perfect cursive, it announced that the HOA board had passed a new community safety policy. Starting immediately, board members were authorized to open and inspect the contents of any mailbox in the neighborhood. They claimed it was to prevent harmful materials from entering our streets. I read it 3 times, certain it had to be a joke. It wasn't. Karen had basically declared herself the neighborhood mail police. Who gave her the right to touch my mail? Since when does an HOA get to violate federal postal law? I marched straight across the street, letter in hand. Her house was immaculate. Manicured lawn, perfectly trimmed hedges, and those creepy garden gnomes staring at me like tiny informants. She opened the door with that fake, syrupy smile that made my blood boil. I held up the letter. Care to explain this? Karen crossed her arms, tilted her chin like royalty, and said, "It's for everyone's safety. If you know what's good for you, you'll comply." That was the moment I knew this wasn't about safety. This was about control. Comment HOA below if you've ever dealt with one of these power-tripping Karens, because what I did next. Well, let's just say she'll never touch another mailbox again. That night I sat at my kitchen table fuming. I tried the responsible route first. I fired off polite but firm emails to the entire HOA board citing actual USPS regulations. I even printed out federal statutes proving that tampering with someone's mailbox is a federal offense. Crickets. Not a single reply. The next day I went door to door. I figured I couldn't be the only one pissed off. First house, Mr. Rodriguez just shook his head. Look, she's been like this for years. It's easier to just let her win. He kept glancing over my shoulder toward Karen's house like she had cameras in the trees. 2 doors down, Sarah whispered. She fined me $250 last month for having my trash can out 45 minutes too long. I'm not risking it. Another neighbor, an older retired guy, just sighed and said, "She always finds a way to make your life hell if you speak up." I felt completely isolated. Grown adults were terrified of one nosy woman with too much time on her hands, but I kept watching. My doorbell camera caught her 3 more times that week, lingering at my mailbox, pretending to inspect the flowers, while her fingers twitched toward the door. Each time, she got bolder, staying longer. My blood pressure was through the roof. At one point, I seriously Googled how to sue an HOA president, but the more I read, the more I realized it would take months, thousands in legal fees, and she'd probably drag it out just to spite me. Legal routes were slow. Karen was fast. She was winning by default. That's when it hit me. I remembered my old buddy Marcus. The guy's a beekeeper, treats his hives like pets. Calm, methodical, and completely unafraid of bees. If anyone could help me pull off something crazy but effective, it was him. For the first time in days, I smiled. What if I made my mailbox the last place on earth Karen ever wanted to touch again? That same night, I sat at my kitchen table like a mad scientist, surrounded by sketches, printed laws, and empty coffee mugs. I considered 3 other plans first. 1. Install a heavy-duty lock. 2. Set up a motion-activated sprinkler. 3. File a police report and hope for the best. All of them felt weak. Karen would just find new ways to harass me. I needed something that would create instant, unforgettable consequences. So I called my old friend Marcus. The guy everyone calls Crazy Carl because he keeps bees in his backyard and talks to them like they're his kids. I laid out the whole ridiculous situation. There was a long pause on the line. Then he started laughing. "Bro, you want to turn your mailbox into a bee trap? That's insane, but I'm in." The next evening, he showed up with a small, well-ventilated wooden box, designed for transporting queen bees in small swarms. From the outside, it looked exactly like an ordinary Amazon package. Brown cardboard, printed label, nothing suspicious. Inside, hundreds of calm worker bees hummed quietly. Carl assured me they were a gentle variety, not overly aggressive unless seriously provoked. We spent hours going over safety. The bees would only get agitated if the box was opened suddenly. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, innocent, just the person who kept violating my property. I'd step in immediately if anyone else approached. I researched the loopholes obsessively. As long as I never touched her property and the bees were legally acquired, I was technically in the clear. The real crime would be hers, opening someone else's mailbox. Before Carl left, I upgraded my security. I added 2 new cameras with crystal clear 4K focus locked directly on the mailbox, plus a hidden backup angle from the 2nd floor window. Everything was being recorded 24/7. For a brief moment I hesitated, staring at the innocent-looking box on my table. Am I really going this far? Then I remembered her smug face telling me it was for everyone's safety, while she treated my private mail like her personal property. Yeah, this would sting. I smiled for the first time in weeks. The night felt electric. Around 1 a.m., when the whole neighborhood was dead quiet, I slipped outside wearing all black like some amateur spy. My heart hammered as I carefully slid the ventilated box into my mailbox. It fit perfectly. I adjusted it so the flap would open right into the box, then gently closed the door. The faint hum inside was barely audible, but I knew what was waiting. For the next 2 days, nothing happened. I became a nervous wreck. Every few hours, I'd check the cameras like a paranoid conspiracy theorist. I barely slept. During the day, I worked from home but kept one eye on the live feed. A mailman came by. I nearly had a heart attack until I saw him just deliver normal mail and leave. A kid on a bike stopped to tie his shoe near the box. False alarm. My nerves were completely fried. The street looked so peaceful on the surface. Perfectly manicured lawns, American flags gently waving, birds chirping. But underneath that suburban calm, something dangerous was brewing. I knew Karen's pattern by now. She always struck in the late afternoon when most people were still at work. She liked the privacy. She liked feeling untouchable. On the third day, right as the sun began to dip, I saw it. Her floral dress appeared at the end of the street. Clipboard in hand, sunglasses on, walking with that signature entitled stride. She was heading straight toward my house. I leaned closer to the monitor, pulse racing. This was it. There she was. Karen strutted down the sidewalk in her signature bright floral dress. Clipboard clutched like a weapon of war. Sunglasses perched on her head like she owned the neighborhood. She paused at my mailbox, glanced left and right, then crouched down with that entitled confidence. I held my breath, eyes glued to the monitor. She reached out, grabbed the mailbox door and yanked it open. For a split second, everything was still. Then, chaos. A massive golden cloud exploded outward like a living tornado. The bees poured out in a furious, buzzing swarm, instantly surrounding her. The sound was incredible. A deep, angry hum that cut through the quiet suburban afternoon. Karen let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed down the entire street. She flailed wildly, slapping at her hair, her arms, her face. "Get off me! Get off!" she shrieked, spinning in circles like a broken marionette. The bees were everywhere, in her hair, down her collar, on her arms. She stumbled backward into the street, arms windmilling desperately. I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing so hard I nearly fell out of my chair. Holy shit, it actually worked. She took off running down the sidewalk, the swarm chasing her like tiny golden avengers. Her floral dress snagged on a rose bush, ripping loudly as she yanked herself free. She tripped over her own feet and rolled across Mrs. Henderson's front lawn, still screaming and slapping at invisible attackers. The bees showed no mercy, targeting every bit of exposed skin. By now, half the neighborhood had rushed outside. Doors flew open. Phones came out. People were filming everything. Sarah from 2 doors down stood there with her mouth wide open. Mr. Rodriguez was actually laughing. For the first time, Karen wasn't in control, and everyone was watching. She finally collapsed dramatically onto a patch of grass, panting, swollen and hysterical, still swatting at her neck and arms. The swarm began to disperse, satisfied with their work, buzzing off into the evening sky. I leaned back in my chair, grinning from ear to ear, replaying the last 30 seconds on my monitor. The pure poetic justice of it all. The queen bee of the HOA was taken down by actual bees. It was more beautiful than I could have imagined. While Karen was still sitting on the grass, looking like a swollen tomato, I calmly picked up my phone and called the local postal inspector's office. I explained the situation clearly. A neighbor had been repeatedly tampering with my mailbox, and I had video evidence. Within 20 minutes, a postal inspector's car pulled up. A tall, no-nonsense man in a sharp uniform stepped out. The entire neighborhood watched in stunned silence as he walked over to Karen, who was still trying to swat phantom bees and pointing wildly at my house. "He set me up," she shrieked, voice cracking. "He put those bees in there. This is assault." The inspector didn't flinch. He asked for my footage. I played the clear 4K video showing Karen deliberately opening my mailbox right before the swarm exploded. The timing was perfect. The inspector turned to her and said flatly, "Mom, opening someone else's mailbox is a federal offense under USPS regulations, mail tampering. It doesn't matter what you think was inside." Karen's face went pale under all the swelling. When he mentioned the fine of $700 for the first offense, with potential escalation if it continued, her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. No more smugness. Just pure humiliation in front of everyone she tried to control. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Karen's iron grip on the HOA loosened dramatically. Neighbors started speaking up at meetings. Some even thanked me quietly. The fear she had weaponized for years finally turned on her. I didn't do it for glory. I did it because sometimes you have to remind bullies that there are consequences when you push people too far. Justice, it turns out, can buzz. At the end of the day, this whole mess wasn't really about bees. It was about HOA overreach. And what happens when one person decides they have the right to control everyone else's life? Sometimes you have to get creative, while staying on the right side of the law, to remind bullies that their actions have consequences. If you enjoyed this chaotic dose of justice and want more wild HOA takedowns, petty neighbor revenge, and satisfying comeuppance stories, do me a huge favor and smash that like button. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Now I want to hear from you. What's the craziest thing your HOA has ever tried to pull? Would you ever fight back like this, or do you have your own story? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. Next week, I'm telling the story of the time Karen tried to ban my American flag, and how that backfired spectacularly. Until then, stay vigilant out there. This is Prodigy Tales, where justice gets served with a sting.